Hi everyone, Christopher here, and welcome back to another episode of Fossil Forward Finds. We have a special episode for you today. This is the premiere episode of the On the Wire series, a series where we explore interesting QSL cards from all over the world. So grab your passport, pack your bag, because we are heading to Reykjavik, Iceland for our first episode. Here we go. All right, so before we take a look at the QSL card in question, I figured I would discuss quickly why I chose Iceland to start us off. One thing, Iceland is just pretty cool. It was one of the first places I ever visited for geology, first international geology trip, and geologically, it is incredibly unique. It's the only place on Earth where the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which you can see coming along here, only place where the Mid-Atlantic Ridge comes on land, which is why we have so much volcanism there. And back in 2010, I had the pleasure of going on a geology trip to Iceland, and just a few months prior to my visit, the Eyjafjallajökull volcano erupted. This was back in 2010. I don't know if you recall that, but it was a pretty sizable eruption. It shut down air traffic for a while, and I religiously watched it on webcam, in part because I was worried about whether we'd actually get to go on the trip, which thankfully we did, and we got to actually hike up to that volcano, that glacier, the lava flows, all the things while we were there. So this is part of the hike over. You can see some of the glacier in the background. Here we're getting up to the flows. You can see all the ash flying through the air, how barren it looks. And then just a quick shot of me there, younger me. So all this basalt that I'm standing on or sitting on wasn't there a few months prior to my visit. This large cone structure in the back here was also not there prior to the eruption. So it was a really cool trip. I could go on forever, but that's not the point of this video. The point is to look at the QSL card. So this is the QSL card I have for Iceland. I don't come across Iceland cards that often, whether they be regular postcards or QSL. And as far as I'm aware, this is the only QSL one that I currently have. And was sent from Reykjavik, Iceland, to actually Washington State. Let's see back here, Washington State in 1978. And it's kind of interesting for a number of reasons. One, if you think about Iceland relative to Washington State over here, I mean, that is quite the ways to be bouncing your radio signals, which is already neat on its own. But another reason is the date. So the date on this is 1978, and this is just a few years after what is known as the Cod Wars, which a little rabbit hole I was not expecting to go down. And I'm not going to go deep into the weeds because I'm not an expert on it, and you can read the interwebs just as easily as I can. But essentially, the Cod Wars, they range from 1950 to about 1976, sort of split into the first, second, and third Cod War. First being 1958 to 1961, second 1972 to 1973, and then the last one 1975 to 1976. So this takes place, this postcard was sent a few years after that. And the Cod Wars was a conflict between Iceland and the United Kingdom. Iceland was expanding their exclusive fishing rights around the island, and the UK took exception to that. So these events had a lot of different little incidents that occurred, including ramming, cutting of nets. In the third Cod War, Iceland actually, for a period of time, cut off one of their major military bases to outside use, to NATO use specifically, and even threatened to pull out of NATO entirely. Now, in the end, Iceland did succeed. The agreement allowed for their new territorial rights to go forward, but I believe there was some sort of like temporary exception carved in for the UK for a period of time. But I thought that was an interesting little tidbit. I had never heard of the COD Wars before. And here we have, of course, QSL card sent by, let's see if I can get it right. Where is the name? Is it on back here? Yeah. Ingvi Hardison, and sent from Reykjavik, Iceland to Washington, as I stated. And you got a nice little fishing trawler image on the front here, which fits nicely with our theme. On the front it says biggest shrimp and scallop exporter in Iceland. So interesting little card there. I got this from my good friend Dave over at Dave F. Brother on Whatnot. Had it listed for a little bit now, since December of last year. So if it's something you're interested in, please check out the store. And yeah, that's really all I have to talk about on this one at the moment. Well, I hope you enjoyed our little trip to Iceland. If you have any questions about Iceland QSL, anything of the sort, please leave them in the comments below. We are going to hop back on the plane and head back to the homestead, which reminds me I do have a little garden channel, Fossil Forward Homestead, if that is something you're interested in. Anyways, that is it for now. Until next time, never stop exploring.